Good morning. This is the BLAINESWORLD webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can now listen in and catch us on Instagram as well. And you get more information, find out about past shows at the website, which is behind me. It's blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on business news and information that people and organizations in Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Suzanne Fisher, who's president of the League of Women Voters, Asheville-Buncombe County. And Suzanne, you can feel free to wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this. Okay, that is Suzanne. And as you'll see, Suzanne heads in this area the League of Women Voters, which is just a tremendous organization. But before becoming involved, Suzanne was a retired cell biologist who spent her entire career at National Institute of Health. She and her husband built their mountain home outside of Black Mountain and moved here 10 years ago. She's active in the League of Women Voters, lead for the National Popular Vote Action Team, and a member of the state board. And so the question I always ask Suzanne is that in terms of your background, it certainly was not in the issue of voting rights and getting people to vote. How do you kind of make the transition? You were a scientist at one point in time, and how do you make the transition to becoming a voting activist?
Well, I've always voted. I think I've voted in every election I could for school board on up. I'm of the age I had to wait till I was 21 to vote. And as a government employee, I couldn't be involved in political activity. But I just think it's very important, that people vote. And when I've been involved in a lot of volunteer things over the years, but when I found out about League of Women Voters here, it just seemed to really resonate with me and what they're doing. I'm a strong believer in women and a feminist. And of course, they have their origin in the suffragist movement when women won the right to vote. We were not given it, we won it. And it just seems, I just feel very aligned with the people there. I've made wonderful friends at the local, state, and national level. So it's just really been something I'm very, I work hard at it and I'm proud to do it. And I think we can make a difference.
Do you remember the first election you ever voted in?
Yes, it was in 1972. And I do remember, that's the year I graduated from college, so everybody can do the math.
Right around me, yeah.
And for the primary, I was home for spring break, so I went and I asked for a ballot. And this was in Cook County, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and it had these wonderful voting machines. You went in there, and there was this big handle, and you turned it, and the curtain closed, and you flipped levers. It was a very visceral experience to vote there. So I definitely remember the first time I voted.
And certainly in Illinois during that time, there were some certainly very contentious elections, I guess, in that state, or not necessarily where you live, but maybe where you lived as well. But it became a very it's a shame. All of a sudden, it had become a very contentious thing to vote. Instead of just something that people just accept. That's kind of sad, isn't it? That it's now become a much bigger issue than it should be.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a real concern is that people are worried that their vote doesn't count. And our slogan this year in North Carolina, if you will, is vote and make sure your vote counts. And one of the reasons we do that is that because of the new requirements, it's just really important that people are aware and follow through to make sure that they are registered. Even if you think you were registered, you may have been knocked off. If you're doing absentee ballot, to be aware of the rules for when it has to get in. It's not as generous as before. So you really need to follow up to make sure you've got the right voter ID. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that. But that it's not just showing up on the day or mailing in your ballot. You really have to follow things. And there's something called ballot tracks that you can track your absentee ballot. So it's not just going to be a one-stop event now. I mean, you need to be informed, and then you need to be sure that you've done everything to make sure your vote counts.
What's interesting as you say that is the fact that I'll try to keep this from being a too political discussion or political discussion at all. Yet I always find it interesting that people talking about having a vote count are never the people who win an election. it's just so strange to me that the people who win elections are very happy with the results, but only people who lose elections seem to contest them. Is
I
that
think
sort
historically that's true, yes.
of
I don't think you'll find a case of where that the reverse has happened.
Well, let me ask you this. Has it gotten even more contentious since the years you've been involved? You started back in 72 voting and you voted ever since then.
I think so, yeah. I think I mean, we are strictly a nonpartisan organization. We do not ever endorse or oppose any candidates, but we are an advocacy organization. So we do advocate for our views and the things that are important. And it when you're arguing for voting rights, and then there are other people who seem to be trying to make sure fewer people vote. I mean, it feels like they've hijacked some of the things that we feel should be obvious. I mean, every citizen who's eligible should be able to vote in a reasonably simple, straightforward manner. And it's not always the case.
And what's a shame, especially with League of Women Voters, is as a kid I grew up, it's just this fantastic organization. I still think it is fantastic. Yet all of a sudden that people are saying League of Women Voters shouldn't be allowed to run debates, for example, or national debates. And if not League of Women Voters, who do you want to run a debate?
Well, actually, the league got out of the debate business because it got pretty contentious, and so they haven't done that for quite a few years. But I mean, even locally, we used to have candidate forums, but
Right.
the league feels very strongly that if you have a forum where, there will be questions, that the candidates, the multiple candidates for each position need to be there. And we found it very hard to get the candidates to agree. So now we do more what we call meet and greets, where it's kind of like a science fair for candidates. You'll have a room, and each candidate will have their own table, and people can go around and talk to them. But we don't, we don't want to give just one side the ability to state their case. We try to be very careful about not having what we call empty chair forums or debates. So we're going much more to meet and greet.
And
And
talk
that's
about,
the same
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
with our Vote 411 system that I hope we can talk a little bit about soon, which is a one-stop shopping for information about getting registered and where to vote and when to vote. And then we send out questions to all the candidates and ask them to answer questions. And they're generally pretty simple ones about what are your three most important issues, what do you hope to accomplish in your first year. And we get very mixed results with people responding, which we find very discouraging because we make it pretty easy and we let them put up links to their website and things there. It's a really great way to get the information, but not all the candidates want to participate. And we hound them a little bit. We'll make multiple contacts by email and phone and whatever to try and get them to do this, but we don't, not everyone is willing to participate.
Why do you think that's the case?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's for the same people that don't like the League of Women Voters. I, I mean, we are, I mean, we have really five main areas that we focus on under our campaign called Making Democracy Work. One is voting rights. Who can vote? How that improving elections, and that's about the logistics of elections, early voting, voting by mail, things like that. Campaign finance and money in politics. Redistricting, which is, all tied into this, and gerrymandering and opposing that. And then our most recent one, direct election of the president, which gets into national popular vote and hopefully eventually abolition of the Electoral College by constitutional amendment, though that's going to be a long haul.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great?
That's
Just
what we're about.
we'll talk about then sort of the first thing you said though, and just in terms of voting rights and people having the right to vote and making it easy for voting. And one of the great things I think in my lifetime was the whole idea of early voting,
Yes.
And I remember, and I'm sure you do too, it really hit me with the Gore versus Bush election, and I was in Pennsylvania at the time. I had to wait 3.5 hours to vote. And I said to myself, I'm not going to, do this again, or most people won't bother. So I think it's like the greatest thing since cream cheese, but yet people are opposed to it, you know.
Yeah, they are. And in fact, it's not universal. My son and daughter-in-law live in Delaware. Last year was the first time they had early voting in the state of Delaware. So, voting is controlled very locally by the states and the counties. And there are reasons for that because let's face it, the needs in, let's say, Haywood County and Mecklenburg County in our state are very different. But I personally think that something like early voting should be universal in all states for the general election, for the set November elections, and it should be the same window. But now, should there be, maybe in big cities they do better with later hours and not so much so in rural areas. I mean, you can see some reasons why there needs to be some local decisions made, but I think every state should have early voting, and they
Yeah,
don't.
even in North Carolina, I love early voting. I take a part in it all the time. But I sometimes even question, though, does it have to be that long? In other words, you want to make early voting. What's in North Carolina? It's 3 weeks or 4 weeks or
It's
something like
about
that.
2 weeks. It's about
Yeah.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, but it seems like a long time, that give
Two
people a
and a half.
week, and it's so convenient. You go to the mall, you go to all these different places, you can vote. Yet, what percentage ballpark in North Carolina people take advantage of it?
Oh, and it's pretty high. It's pretty high. I think it may be over half of the people vote early. Uh, I think some of that's, with COVID, a lot of people like the idea of going, trying to pick a time when it wasn't so busy and they got used to it. But I mean, that's one of the reasons why oftentimes in states that have early voting, they get the election results out
Right.
because in North Carolina, they're allowed to tabulate the votes early too. And so I mean, we call election day now the last day you can vote.
Right. But yeah, in Pennsylvania, you're saying, I think it was Pennsylvania, that you can vote early, but you don't tabulate it until the polls are closed. And that to me sort of defeats the purpose of it.
Yeah, because it's in the machine, I
Right.
mean, the tabulators are just, they just you put the ballots through and they register them. That's there, but they don't. And again, that's something that states get to decide. And I think some people, and I know there was a lot of messaging last time. People, I think at one time got used to, by 11 o'clock, Walter
Right.
Cronkite or somebody would tell you who won. And voting has gotten a little more complicated and, but people think if it takes longer to get the results that they're more uncertain, but it's probably really that either they have these rules that they can't start. Some places you can't open the absentee ballots till after the polls are closed on the general election day. Or,
What?
so that, I mean, and if you get a lot of ballots by mail, then they take time.
Yeah. And exactly. So rather than to force people then to have to wait around till the polls close, all night or whatever, it's a shame they can't start tabulating it earlier.
Mhm.
What about also the problem, again, and I'm sure you folks have to deal with as well, that people don't trust the balloting. They don't trust the actual vote. And that must be very discouraging for you.
Yes, it is. And it's out to say, and I think some of it is that people don't understand the system. And we try to do just a lot of voter education. But, when we go in, we fill out the ballot and then you put it into this tabulator machine. That is a dumb machine, if you will. It is not connected to the internet. It is strictly, kind of a fancy abacus. It's a counter. So it can't be hacked. There's no way. There's no internet connection. People, it looks like a computer or something. And so that's what we have to do is just a lot of education to people to let them know. And the boards of education, I always say education, the boards of elections
Right.
are, they're people who are devoting their time to it. The staff are wonderful, and the actual appointed members, they work very hard. We're monitoring boards of election meetings in 3 counties now, Buncombe, Madison, and McDowell. And we're just universally impressed with how careful they are and how they just want to make sure that everybody can vote and just they go over things. One good thing we have in North Carolina, since we open our absentee ballots early, is that if there's a problem, they have what they call the cure process. in which the staff of the Board of Elections will contact the person. A common thing is if you get two ballots from the same household, they mix up which envelopes they send them back in. And so, the husband's is in the wife's envelope and the wife's in the husband's. And so they'll talk to them and get it straight and things. Or if they forgot to sign, they'll tell them they have to do it again, or they can come into the Board of Elections and sign it. So we do, but they really are committed to making sure that every person can vote. And anybody, some counties they're on Zoom. In Buncombe they're on Zoom. In McDowell you have to go there. Anybody can go and watch, and I would encourage people to do, just to see how careful they are with the process. And they are us. They are just, they are neighbors who are doing this.
Talk a little bit about then back to the league, something you mentioned. So one of the big initiatives you have is the Vote 411 initiative, I guess. And what exactly is that?
Well, it's the one-stop shopping for all the information you need to vote and to know who you're voting for and things like that. It was started in 2006. We've had it in English and Spanish since 2020. And the basic structure of it is the League of Women Voters of the US. And it's a pretty complicated thing because we're getting down to the level of school board elections in every little town. In our 3 counties say that we're watching. So they have the basic structure. The state populates, think of it as the world's biggest spreadsheet maybe, but it's not quite. But they populate things, and then at each county level, we go out and contact, as I said, the candidates to say, please answer these questions. We send them a link, make it very easy for them to cut and paste in there. For the primary, the goal is to have the information up on February 1. Though if they submit late, we'll keep adding as we can get more. But when you go on there, you put in your name and your address, and it tells you well, first you can check your registration, and you should look and see to make sure it's active. If it's whatever party you've chosen, or if you've chosen to be unaffiliated, then it'll tell you where you can vote and early voting and things like that. You can print off a sample ballot, and then you can go to all of the candidates and read their responses to the various questions and things like that. It has all the locations. It's just everything you need to know in one place.
By the way, how does somebody access that? And that's on the web?
You can get it on your laptop, on your computer, on your tablet, on your mobile. Just do a search on Vote 411. And that's all. It's vote411.org. But if you just put in Vote 411, it will take you there. And it's engineered to be very usable on all 3 platforms.
Now, is that national or just in North Carolina?
It's national. It's national. It's in all 50 states, all the local chapters. We don't quite cover all the counties. We don't have local chapters in every county, but many chapters like ours reach out to our neighbors. There's another chapter in Henderson County, so they're doing down there. So that everybody can get the information about where to vote and when to vote. The candidate information is dependent on the local chapters doing the work to get the candidates to respond.
Now, if I go to Vote 411, then I can is that where I can also look up my name and see how I'm registered? Is that where that is? Okay.
Yeah.
And that'll show me how I'm registered. Will it show me my past voting history?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay.
You might be able to get that on the state site. I actually don't know the answer to that.
Okay. But everybody then should at least check out Vote 411, especially here's another problem too that happens. I guess I've noticed it, that voting locations change though too, right? And so sometimes it's confusing where you're supposed to vote, or
Yeah, it is. For early voting, you can vote anywhere. Like, so you're in Buncombe County, you can go to any of the early voting
Good to
sites.
know.
I think there's 10 to 12 of them.
Typically,
but on
yeah.
election day, you're supposed to go to your specific precinct.
Yeah.
So that's a difference. Some places like McDowell, which is, not so populous, early voting is only at the Board of Elections. But that's in Marion, it's pretty central. But then on election day, then it's in the various precincts. And depending on how their city council or school board is organized, people in different precincts may get slightly different ballots. If you elect your council candidates not as at large, the way they do in Buncombe County, but some places they do it by districts. And so then different people would get different ballots. So that's why it's important.
Now, in terms of getting the different ballots, does make as you're saying, as you're mentioning it, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense that you have to vote in the primary at any location. Why can't you vote at any location in the regular election?
Um, I don't know. I mean, that's the way it has been for the
Right,
10 years I've been here. Probably it had, well, I think, because they still have to make the different ballots available to you
right.
if you vote anywhere. Uh, Maybe just because I think for early voting, it tends to be, I mean, the times I've done early voting, I've been the only person there, or there's been one other
Right.
person. It's just a little slower, a little simpler. Yeah, they can pull up the different ballots for you, but it's a decision that they've made.
What about voting in North Carolina? It's not the option, but if you want people to vote, as a kid, you and I grew up considerably. They used to close, at least on national elections. Everything was closed down. It was just election day. How come they did away with that?
Well, it's never been a national holiday, though there are a
No?
lot of people who think it should be. And I know in many countries it's a national holiday, and they often vote on the weekends. But it's not a holiday. Things close. Well, having grown up or spent some time in Cook County, I think at one time they made the bars close so that they couldn't buy people's votes, but that was long ago.
In Cook County. No, but I'm saying as a kid, I remember schools were closed though, or that
Well, schools are often polling places.
right. Yeah.
So I think that's the reason is that school gym. I mean, I think I've probably voted in school gymnasiums, most of the time. But so I think when they use the schools, then they just don't want to have the kids around as well.
I know you're big in terms of you mentioned a couple times already, people getting involved in the election process. What are some of the ways that people should get involved in the election process?
Well, first off, vote. Encourage all their friends and relatives to vote, their family, coworkers, are you registered? Are you going to vote? Do you have a voting plan? People can go and work as poll workers, which is quite a commitment. You do get paid, but people can do that. There always need to have poll workers out there. There are things, Democracy NC, which is another nonpartisan organization, has a program of poll observers. And there you are outside the polling place, but you're just sort of watching to see if things are going smoothly, if there are long lines, if, in North Carolina, they have to have the ability to come out and let you vote in your car if you're not able to get out and do that. Are they promptly attending to those people? So I've done that. It's pretty, ideally, it's very boring. That nothing happens. But it is, and then you have a number that you can call if you think's a problem. You put out a little sign on your windshield, have any questions, I'll be happy to help. There's something called Vote Rider that gives people rides to the polls. So there are, I mean, Common Cause has things that they do. A lot of the nonpartisan organizations have different things that they help people vote. There are people who get training and help people in assisted living and such locations to vote there. So there are lots of things you can do. We
When
do a lot of voter registration. We do voter registration efforts. We have tables in various places in schools. In North Carolina, if you will be 18 by the general election, November 5th, you are allowed to vote in the March 5th primary. So sometimes we go and register. We've done a lot of work getting students able to help their fellow students register to vote. And there is a brand new voter registration form that has just come out just this year. That's frankly, I think a little clearer. It marks in red the places you have to fill out and things. One of the big differences is that you have to either give your North Carolina driver's license, the last 4 digits of your social security number, or indicate that you have neither one of those. And that's now a required thing. It used to be optional.
what about something you and I were talking about there? about changes in terms of voting and questioning of voting, in terms of you mentioned photo ID, but also I was talking about a signature guarantee, Is
Right.
that something we're moving more into or getting away
Well,
from
the
it?
signature thing they're sort of testing it this time, but the voter ID, I mean, that was in effect for the last fall for the places that had municipal elections, which there weren't too many in our area, so people probably didn't pay attention. But you have to have an approved ID. Uh, there are hundreds of approved IDs. I mean, driver's license count, military IDs, all of the University of North Carolina student IDs count, but not all colleges do. The IDs have to have your photo, they have to have an expiration date. At any board of elections, you can go and get a free voter ID at the board of elections if you're already registered.
Is that
You
is
just
that a
have to go
picture?
in.
Is that a picture
It's a
ID?
picture ID. And one of the things that's kind of nice about it is it doesn't have your address. And so, sometimes when you're showing your ID, you don't
Right.
necessarily want somebody to know. It takes maybe 2 minutes if it takes long. I mean, they look up that you're registered, you stand, they get the camera, they take your picture and the little machine spits out your North Carolina voter ID. And that's good.
And how do people
And so
access
I
that?
have both. I mean, I have my driver's license and that one can't. Your passport counts. Most people don't walk around with their passport. If you show up to vote and you don't have your ID, there is a form that you can check as to explain why you lost it, the dog ate it, whatever. Uh, if you're voting early and you go out to vote and realize you don't have it, you left your wallet at home, you can go early on another day. Another reason not to wait for the last day. Uh, if you're voting by mail, but absentee, you are supposed to put a photocopy of your ID in with your absentee ballot, or if you don't, you have to fill out the form explaining that you can't. Uh, so it's making things a little more complicated. People get worried that they don't look like their photo ID if it's been around for a while. Hair
I
colors change, amount of hair
I just
changes.
shaved the beard, same kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Uh, and it's supposed to be, a reasonable determination. I mean, the idea is to sort of assume that people, that the ID they present is theirs, and to realize that people do change. If you your driver's license, but your middle initial didn't make it on your voter registration, that is not to be a reason to disqualify you. Some people have hyphenated names that they sometimes use or just use one last name. So they're supposed to do a reasonable, good faith determination. If it's complicated, it may be a provisional ballot, and then they'll have to do a little more research. But it's not supposed to keep people from voting if they truly have an ID. But some people get nervous about it, that they won't take their ID. Which, if
And
you have more than one, it can't hurt to bring those just to show that it's really you.
good advice. Also, Suzanne, the reality, at least in North Carolina, is cases of people using fake ID or fraudulent voting are like so minuscule, right? I mean, it's not,
Yes.
that people say they're voting illegally, but the reality is, even when they track it down, it's like non-existent for the most part, at least what I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, if it happens in a couple places for a couple votes in a big election year, I mean, there are people who, I guess there are people, and I don't know why, if they just like to game the system or whatever, but it is just very rare. It is very rare all across the country. I mean, it is extremely rare. We
Yeah, yeah.
people, I mean, other countries look to our voting systems in many ways and use them as good examples. Uh, so
Suzanne, talk a little bit then about League of Women Voters. If folks, first of all, what exactly, you mentioned some of the things you do. How does somebody get involved in it if somebody wants to become a member?
sure. Well, if we have a website, again, if you just do a search of League of Women Voters of Asheville-Buncombe County, you'll get to our website. We have a lot of information up there. I mean, we're putting up all the dates and everything about uh, the elections and things, but there's a thing you can join us. We have action teams, one on voter education, civic education, voter registration. one on ERA, gender equity, reproductive choice, and then direct election of the president are our three main action teams. We did a lot of fun festivals over the summer. We really tried to expand the different festivals we were at. We were at Vegan Fest and Hemp Fest. We even had Princess Leia at the Comic Con thing in Asheville to try and get at. We're trying to reach younger voters and yeah, we don't want to just preach to the choir. So we're really trying to expand and get more and more people interested in voting and give them then the information they want.
And you mentioned a couple of times a direct election of the president. Do you think that'll happen in your lifetime or my lifetime?
I think so. I think
Really?
so. And this is now a big effort of the League of Women Voters, starting at the U.S. level. They call it the moonshot. Uh, and but the first step is the national popular vote, which is a thing where states change from their winner-take-all laws to saying that they will assign their electors from the Electoral College to whichever candidate gets the most votes when all the votes in the nation are totaled up. And of course, you need 270 Electoral College votes to win. Everybody will know that by heart by
Right.
November. We currently have 16 states in the district signed up for 205 votes. So we only need states totaling 65 more votes to get there. And, that's 5, 6 states, depending on who they are. There was a bill introduced in the North Carolina House last year, House Bill 191, that it's gone nowhere. It's stuck in Rules Committee, which is where things go to expire.
Or to
But
get
North
stuck.
Carolina, if we could pass it, and we're going to keep working on that, we have 16 Electoral College votes to contribute to that. So I think that will happen. I think there are a couple states that may do it this year, and
So
maybe even by 2028.
explain the process. So if North Carolina, it gets through the process and there are 270, what happens then at that point in time? That all of a sudden popular vote comes into play or just in those
Well,
states?
when that happens, the states that have signed up, let's say it'll be 22 states when we get there.
Right.
Those 22 states, the Constitution says that the state legislatures shall instruct their electors. So those 22 states, they'll probably total more than 270 votes. Let's say it gets to 276 or something, just because, we have 3s and 4s and 10s and all of that. Those states will assign all of their electors to whoever is the national winner, adding up all 50 states in the district. So those 24 states will do it that way. They will hit 276 Electoral College votes in our theoretical thing. That controls the election. The other states will still do winner take all because they haven't, but it's an interstate compact because the states say that when they get to at least 270 votes, then all of those states will act in the same way. And because they're at 270 votes or whatever they are over that, that controls the election. So it's using the Electoral College. It's constitutionally conservative. It doesn't take an amendment to the US Constitution, but it will be proof of principle that, the popular vote can work. I mean, we have over 500,000 electoral offices in our country, starting from the local school board or dog catcher or whatever, all the way up. Only the president is it not assured that the candidate with the most votes of all the people eligible to vote for president, which is in all 50 states in the district, will win. We've had 5 second-place presidents,
Right.
2 in this century. So the idea is that once we have the national popular vote for a couple cycles, then the idea of amending the Constitution will, they say, why are we doing
Right.
the roundabout way? Let's do it the straight way.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, why not just count the votes and whoever gets the most votes and kind of do away, but that's constitutional change and with the electoral college, right? You'd have
Well, I
to.
mean, that's, be class president, student council. I mean, I, you know, the teams with the most points in the playoffs are going forward. I mean, that's just common sense.
Yeah, well, hopefully, like I said, in our respective lifetimes, we'll see that, but I won't hold my breath too much on that. Suzanne, to recap a little bit then, if folks want to get involved with the League of Women Voters, two ways. One, they can go to the website. Again, the website is what?
League of Women Voters, Asheville-Buncombe County,
Okay. And
LWVAB.
okay, but specifically, if they want to become a volunteer with the league, I assume League of Women Voters, I assume it's primarily women you're looking for volunteers.
Well, no, our name is historic. We came right out of the suffragist movement. We're 103 years old, or 104 years old this year, but you have to be 16. That is the
Okay.
basic requirement. You have to be 16, men, women, who you love, whatever. We're happy with everybody.
Right.
We have a number of men who are members, including my spouse, and the president of the Henderson County is a man.
Oh, really? Good to know.
No, they are rare. I mean, we are mainly women, but we have student members. If you're an active student, there's no fee. And we have student members, and they have been very good in doing the student registration and getting more people. So no, we welcome everybody. And
Has
you
it
don't have to be in Buncombe County.
has there been a move to change even the name somewhere down the road?
I don't think so. I think that the history, I don't think there will, I would be surprised.
I'm
I
trying.
wouldn't bet on that one in my lifetime.
No, because I'm trying to think that organizations that have changed, but they didn't change, like Rotary, for example, right? It used to be just for men, and now it's for women. So a lot of groups. I'm trying to think. There must have been some groups that actually changed the names, though, as they were
I'm
doing
trying
that.
to, I don't know of any. I mean, of course, a lot of colleges changed in the 70s and
Right.
things like that,
Women's
but
colleges, men's colleges, interesting stuff. So anyway, thank you for sharing that, because I didn't realize that, I thought it was just for women and legal women voters, but you're welcoming anybody to get involved. And so when they go to the website, is there a place where they can check if they want to personally get involved?
yeah, there's one of the things that you'll see right on the first page is says join. And they just fill out a simple, it's a $50 to join for the year, 75 if it's a household membership. And and they just fill out a little bit of information. When we get that, then they get a little survey about what are you interested in, if you have voter registration, or we have a long list of things. People respond to that, and then that's circulated to the people who are coordinating the different efforts. So if it's direct election of the president, since I had that action team, it'll come to me and things. So we do a lot of things. We'll be at the Junior League Expo in March, March 23rd. That's a great place to go to find out. That's all kinds of organizations from Buncombe County uh, basically have tables and information about what they're doing and how you can join. So people should come out to that at the Crown Plaza Resort, March 23rd.
And back to legal women voters, how often do you meet then, in terms of as a group overall, and then?
We try to have 4 member meetings a year. We may have a little bit more, like a lot of people, we're sort of getting back from not having any in person. We just sort of had just a winter social with a little bit of information. Recently on February 15th, we're having a talk on how to be an informed voter and know about the reliability of information by Amanda Sturgill, who is a professor at Elon. That's mainly for members, but not limited to members. That'll be a Zoom meeting. So we do a variety of things.
Well, whatever you do, I just want to thank you for being a member of the League of Women Voters, and for all the time and effort you put into it. Good group. And I guess the bottom line, we need to have more informed voters, and I guess we need to have more voters,
We
just.
need to, I mean, there are people who can't vote, and people, so I think we should see it as our duty. I think there are places where you can get in trouble for not voting.
I was going to ask you.
Well, there
Um,
are also countries, that are not necessarily repressive, where you are automatically registered when you turn 18 and things. So there are things that we could do, but I mean, people, it's your duty, it's your civic duty to vote.
one last question, if I can, and it's coming up in the national election, it's going to as well, that some people will say, and you see it on the news as well, that they don't like either candidate, So taking in a election where you only have two people running, or a national presidential election, and somebody comes up with that response, they don't like either of the two candidates. What do you tell them?
Well, you're not falling in love. I mean, it's not like you're picking it's more like you want to go from here to there, and you can take the bus or the train, and you know, maybe it doesn't go at the exact times you want, but you look at the one that fits your needs the best, and you go with it. I mean, it's not. We all have different views. I don't think you're going to find a candidate that's going to check off all your boxes, but you have to look and see which candidate you think, for what they say, what you read on Vote 411, what they say in their campaign literature, the one that you feel their views and their values, the person you think, would be best to fit that job. And but it's not like you're picking out your life partner.
Great
And
answer.
you
Yeah,
know what? In 2 years or 4 years, you can vote the other way if it doesn't work out.
so
But just
true.
vote.
Anyway, thank you, Suzanne Fisher, for being
Thank
our guest
you.
on this issue of this Blaine's World webcast. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and hopefully we someday may even see you in person.
I
Suzanne,
think
thank
that'd be
you.
great. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
great.
Bye-bye.